I just wanted to make this video not as an account of how much worse I've got than everyone else. It's not intended to be like that, just as an honest expression of what I'm going through at the moment. It's just an outlet of expression for me. It's not, like I said, anything major. Just wanted to say a bit about what I was going through because sometimes I think it's hard to do that talking to people out of quite the confidence to say that. And perhaps it might not be relevant to people what I'm going through. Maybe it doesn't even matter at all, but I still wanted to say it just so I could have my say and get some of it out basically. Obviously, lockdown's been a tremendously difficult time for everyone, and certainly been a traumatic time for myself. Trauma is a very difficult thing to deal with, but how people respond to it is often characterised by their coping mechanisms. Some people would be outward, so they would basically break the lockdown, like take their anger out on people and everyone. Then others would be inward, isolate themselves, cut off from society, basically just zone out completely so they weren't affected. And I certainly fit that category, and that's what I've done throughout this lockdown. Basically, been in the house for a year and not really done much else, to be honest. I'd virtually no social interaction for last year. Essentially, like being in prison, really. Um, not much of anything really ever since it started. Even though I would have liked to have done, but obviously not been able to do that with the restrictions and everything. So in some sense of the word, I've kind of developed PTSD because what's happened throughout all this is the lockdown isolated me terribly, and basically so much so that I've been cut adrift from society. I am trying to make efforts to get back into society, but essentially, in a nutshell, I'm so used to being in the house that rebuilding my life and being with people, it's an enormous challenge for me, quite simply because I'm not used to it. Basically, this lockdown has had such a severe and detrimental impact on my life. I've basically forgotten how to live. Things that I would have taken for granted in the past, like time with people, socialising, playing football, I've almost forgotten how to do them because I'm so out of touch. Even simple things like going for a walk with people, even that's really difficult for me because I'm just not used to it. I'm so used to being stuck in the house that I've almost become, I would argue, institutionalized, if that's the right word for it. Not certainly very entrenched in being in the house all the time and being on my own as well. Certainly got very used to my own company. So being with other people is almost like an alien concept to me because I've got so used to being on my own over the last year. So I think it would be fair to say that I've developed PTSD as a result of everything I've been through because I'm sure that the lockdown and the terrible and onerous restrictions, or draconian, if you want to use that word, on our daily lives have been quite incredible and unprecedented. Probably one of the worst in history. So it's probably no wonder that I've developed it really because it's just been such a difficult period. But now the problem I've got, linking to what I was saying before, is that I'm finding it very difficult to get back because I've got so used to living like this and being in this way of life. It's very difficult for me to try and spend time with people and find opportunities to get out of the house, which maybe others would take for granted or not even think about it. You know? And the odd thing is that in 2019, before all this happened, life was probably the best it had been for a long time. At least 5 years. I graduated uni in 2014, and really, my life in 2019 was probably the best since then. So it'd been the best it had been for 5 years. So, I was doing things, socialising, was doing all right basically. Was in quite a good place, and then obviously all this happened. It doesn't surprise me in a way that my life did take a turn for the worse because they always say that when things are going good, beware because they'll never last. So if you like, my life had sort of reached a peak in 2019, but it was always going to get worse because it was basically when you reach the peak, you can't go up any further, so the only direction is down. Conversely, the opposite is true. When you're at rock bottom, like I've been throughout this, the only way is up. No, that sounds a little bit corny. So my life had been the best it had been for a while, and then obviously in 2020, and for some of this year, it's probably been the worst it's ever been. Even though I have had some difficult times before in my life, quite a few actually. When I came home from university in 2014, when I left uni, I actually had a similar sort of reaction to what I did with this lockdown, where I just isolated myself and basically hid away from the world. Not because I was scared of the virus, but mainly because obviously there's not much chance of me getting it because I'm only 28. But because it was just everywhere. It was like living in Nazi Germany with every single form of communication, media communication, saying beware the virus. It was like all propaganda. It was just incessant. You just couldn't get away from it. So I just hid away from it. So in 2014, when I left uni, it was the same kind of thing. I just locked myself away. That was a trauma of losing my life and everything that I built up and coming back home. So it was leaving a life behind that was the problem then. And that's kind of been the same problem in 2019 because basically everything I had was out overnight, like everything, including my friends. Locked myself away then as well, and I really struggled to process that and deal with that trauma of leaving university after I graduated. So in some ways, I've actually gone through this lockdown before. I almost voluntarily lived in lockdown for the second half of 2014 and summer 2015, just to process basically leaving uni because it was that traumatic, basically, because I lost everything. I lost all my life, all my friends, because obviously everyone moves to different places after university, from everything to nothing. Very, very abrupt change, just like this lockdown. I really struggle with change, although probably fair to say those two just mentioned, leaving uni and the lockdown, severe change. Like I said, what I'm struggling with now is trying to get back into that. That is proving incredibly difficult and frustrating. Even trying to do things like organising football, difficult. Even like the simplest things, like organising like playing football or spending time with people, even that is difficult. My capabilities have been so drastically reduced by all this because I've just done nothing for like the last year. And on a similar note, my comfort zone has really shrunk as well because all the activities that I used to do and have confidence in, I've not been able to do for a year. So basically, for the last year, all I've ever done is cycle, go for walks, and watch telly, and the odd bit of work here and there. But what I'm used to, my comfort zone is very, very small at the moment. So even things like going to play football and going for walks, people are quite challenging. I imagine that over time we'll get used to things again, but can't quite believe just how difficult I find life at the moment. Mainly what they would call re-entering, I think is the correct term for it, which is where someone goes through a trauma for whatever cause and then they try and rebuild their life, normally get back into society. Because the thing about trauma is, as in my case, especially, it separates you from society. So rebuilding my life is proving almost impossible at the moment. I mean, like I said, even trying to like organise playing football seems like an insurmountable uh, challenge. And also, the other thing I would say about all this affecting me is I've not only like lost my confidence, I've lost myself because before all this, I used to have quite a diverse range of interests, playing and watching football, playing pool, exercise, sport, going to nights out, socialising, those sort of things. Whereas now it only really seems to be football that I have any interest in, not really much else. I used to like academics as well, that doesn't really interest me anymore. So I've kind of lost all my interest, basically lost like my passion, zest, and zeal for life, joie de vivre, you call it. So that's another thing that I've got to try and find as well. In terms of rebuilding my life, I've got to like find my confidence, but also got to find myself again. And hopefully things will get easier over time, but I cannot describe just how difficult it is to break out of this solitary existence that I've become so used to. And trying to fill my time is really difficult as well because there's not much I like doing, there's not much I can do at the moment. But basically, essentially, trying to solve my problems and rebuild my life amounts to one thing: not being isolated and being able to get out of the house on a regular basis. And that is something I have such incredible struggles with at the moment. I'm hoping that gets easier, but at the moment, it's like I might do something once or twice a week, and that's a lot. Basically, either all I can handle or all I can organise. Normally, probably all I can handle. I think if I was in a better place mentally, I would do more. Obviously, to get out of the house benefits me massively. Being stuck in the house isn't any sort of life I should know. I just wish it was easier. I just wish it was easier to build my life. I just wish that I didn't struggle so much with change, and I just wish that more opportunities would come my way, and that basically I was just out of the house on a regular basis and had a decent quality of life. It doesn't sound like much, but to me that would mean an awful lot if I was able to achieve that goal. Where I was out of here regularly interacting with others, and basically lost all my fear and regained my confidence, which would be the very definition of me overcoming this trauma. I think at the moment I just settle for being out of the house on a regular basis because I really hate being stuck in all the time. It's dreadful. It's so bad for people's mental health. Trying to find opportunities to get out of here and do stuff when you're as isolated as I am. Oh, virtually impossible. I mean, sometimes in the past I used to like look on people's Facebook profiles and see them all like doing all these things happy with people, and it used to make me feel really down. It still does a little bit. I'm aware that people only post the highlights reel of their lives on Facebook, but hopefully one day my life will be decent and I'll be out of this house regularly, making um, attempts to build my life and get out of this solitary lifestyle. But I don't know. Hopefully, I'll be able to achieve it. But at the moment, things really need to improve vastly from where they are right now. So that was just a little video about what I've been going through. It may or may not be relevant to you, but it was just a useful form of expression outlet for me, and I find it very useful to talk about what I'm going through because I'm just an open and honest person. And it would be nice if people actually cared about what I was going through and could actually help me out. Maybe this video might help people to see what's going on in my life and be able to help me more. It might inspire them to help me. I don't know, but hopefully some good will come out of it, whatever happens.